Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. I am Krista. I am the Membership Outreach Committee Chair for the Michigan chapter of NATIS. And today we will be bringing our second webinar of the year to you. It is Bringing Your Authentic Self to the Newsroom. And we have Alicia Nails here. She is from Wayne State University, as well as a few guest speakers who are going to be sharing some of their experiences of bringing their authentic selves to the newsroom. And I guess take it away, Alicia.
Okay, don't mind if I do. I'm going to share screen and use this as our introduction. So first of all, thanks for coming. And the beauty of a format like this is that we're able to record this, and this will go down in prosperity till the beginning of time. So we're going to be talking about bringing your authentic self to the newsroom, which is something that was not, unfortunately, a conversation when I looked at what role I would do in broadcasting, and I was a producer. We are so thrilled to be welcome to welcome Whitney Burney. Now, Whitney is at Wood TV as a reporter, and okay, right screen. And she is so excited to be back home in Grand Rapids because that's where she's from. You know how wonderful it is when you get to report from in your home market. Before that, she was in Lynchburg, Virginia, and I've queued up a little clip that we'll see of that for covering some of the activity that went on in that part of the country. In this case, the Unite the Right rally, for which was in Charlottesville, but her station in Lynchburg, Virginia, won an Edward R. Murrow Award for Best Newscast for that reporting. Whitney, like so many women, has had to tweet to the world as a form of righteous indignation that she's getting emails from people about her appearance. Now you could say, well, this would happen to any woman, and perhaps it would, but so often it gets so personal. And so we'll certainly be able to talk about that today. We're also pleased to welcome Josh Landon, who's an anchor reporter here in Detroit, where I am. He's at our Fox 2 affiliate, and he too is reporting from his hometown. But before Detroit, he reported from Florida, Virginia, Wisconsin, and as they say, earned that way back home to a major market like Detroit. That was old Josh. This is new Josh photograph. I love it. When I first saw him on the air with a beard, it resonated with me so much because I had a student 10, 15 years ago. He spoke to my class recently as a media PR professional. He tried to get on the air at WLNS after doing everything you're supposed to do to be qualified to do so, and was told he couldn't have any facial hair because that was not, and this is the code word, universal. The question is always, whose universe are we trying to fit into? And so here's Josh Landon in Detroit with his beard, and we love it. Michael Thompson from WLNS TV in Lansing. He is a native of Southern California, a dynamic, enthusiastic morning anchor at Lansing's WLNS, has a master's from the Medill School at Northwestern University, and he's covered red carpet events when he was out in California. And there's 1,000 wonderful things to say about him. I loved one of his tweets was about his bill at Sephora, because all people on air wear makeup, but he's so authentic in himself. This is one of his tweets. The one thing you should know about my homosexual audacity is it leads me to possess any and all acquired skills to complete whatever project I've set my mind to. Is that deconstructing every attempt at oppression? Now, and I say this for students, if they should watch this, he's using an insider word, which is homosexual. He has license and agency to use that word, just like sometimes in the Black community, we might use the word Negro, but we're using it in a way that's very, very clear. That's an insider word. So I just wanted to point that out because I did show a tweet that used that. I am always so intrigued by the morning shows and the authenticity. Nate Burris is on ABC, and Good Morning America has TJ Holmes. He and Robin Roberts had an exchange that, even though the quality of this video is absolutely disgusting, I still want to show it to you. Be sure I got the share sound on. It's very, very brief and very, very bad quality. But let me see if I can make it. Whoa, come back. Well, can you hear? Are you able to hear any of what he's saying at all? Okay, good. So let me start that over. This is him lauding her. You, my second week at GMA. I'll never forget in that studio. I remember how you were stepping over chords in the commercial break and said, TJ, you remind me of Stuart Scott. You weren't talking about his talent or his ability. You said, because you're doing things your way, don't you ever let anybody talk you into being something else on the air. That was at a time when ABC executives and GMA execs were trying to get me to be something else on the air. This was a 37-year-old. He was almost 40 years of age when, and he had been at CNN and MSNBC when they were still trying to make him conform to something else. So I'm Detroit Delta's president. I got a video, another video rolling. Michigan has lost. So we can certainly say that. And I'm advertising Delta, Whitney. How about that? Whitney is in the other large Black sorority. So let me just start all over with the share. Okay, so you can say, well, all reporters, everybody who wants to be on the air has to conform, but the issue becomes conform to whose standard, and so that's where it kind of takes another turn and feels like code switching, that you have to be something else, someone else when you are on the air, and so that's what we're wanting to address today. That more and more it's not necessary. And you're not required to do that. You just have to be encouraged to know that. I'm gonna actually leave it like this. The next person I wanted to lift up and highlight is Tashara Parker, who is an anchor in Dallas, Texas. And you can see what she has on here. at work. You know what? This is how people look in the world. And I'm 65 years old. I like to say it every day that I can. So this is not my generation. The world changes with each generation. This is a appropriate outfit for her life. And so we can't say that we want people to be who they are and come as they are, but we want them to look and be like something else. So this Instagram that I'm going to share is really not the audio. It's the words that she's using on there. And this was okay. Well, we'll try that. I need to go, girl.
You have to give people an opportunity to be introduced to the new version of who you are. This version of me has peace. I don't have time to be petty. This version of me doesn't gossip. I don't have time to be petty. This version of me doesn't care what other people think because I finally came out. You have to give people an opportunity to.
So what she's saying, she pushes back quite a bit from reader reaction that she gets primarily to her hair, these amazing hair styles that she wears. Some of them are as ancient as time. You can see old African art with our hair. It's able to go into, puffs, and she just does a great job of it. But then there's a lot of that comes with that. Now I'm going to also share. I'm doing a multimedia thing. Like I think I know what I'm doing, but it's okay. We're doing this for the content. Not she's never going to be
comfortable. Here's why I'm asking.
Okay.
Does representation truly matter, or does it only matter for people who make you feel comfortable? Here's why I'm asking you that. I'm a news anchor reporter, and among other things, I cover black hair discrimination. This is my Emmy Award-winning series, and yes, we gonna claim it. Rooted, WFAA.com/rooted is where you can learn more about it, but I talk about black hair discrimination. Now, the reason that I started this series, it happened organically, and it's all because something that happened to me at the current station that I'm working at, folks complaining about my hair. Listen in to how we kicked off the series. Let's just say I had to eat the girls up to get this thing kicked off, all right? Y'all ready for breakfast? Here we go. You might be wondering why we are discussing natural hair and professionalism. It's all about representation. Representation matters. Two words that I've heard consistently throughout my life, and more so in the last couple of days, all because of the way I chose to wear my hair to work. By the way, if you are one of those people typing on your keyboard about this style not being...
Okay, so you can see that she's taking it head on. She's not only being exactly who she wants to be, but she is taking to task folks who have an issue with it. So she's bringing her whole self authenticity to the air and off the air as well. I wanted to also... I guess this is about as close to a personal story as I see myself getting. But years ago, hundreds of years ago, when I was looking at what I wanted to do in the industry, I thought about being on air. But as a plus size person, because you didn't see large women on the air ever, ever, ever. I had some girlfriends come to town from Chicago, and they said, "There's a girl in Chicago who's large size, and her name is Oprah Winfrey." And so looking. Now I'm really trying to go to what did I do? Okay, I'm trying to show you all one last thing. Here we go. And this Whitney commented on this woman, and a lot of on-air people supported her. You can see she's a large woman. She's plus size. She's and went to the Medill School, so she's clearly fit for her purpose. She's up to the task. And there she had video, which I had queued up but lost it, of her dancing in a classroom with students. People have the nerve to tweet to her. She's this accomplished to get a job on the air. I'll use this still. This is Lauren Baker. She's clearly a plus size woman, clearly an attractive woman. She has to ask people to stop contacting her about her size. She knows she's big. We don't need, nobody needs the reminder. And that's not, we're changing the job requirement. The job requirement is no longer that I fit your cookie cutter. It is that I have the ability and I connect with people. And so lastly, let's see here. I'm really feeling like I'm doing this quite professionally here at this point. Somebody sign me up for a switcher. Okay, so your brand, your individual brands, it doesn't have to be universal anymore, because what does that really mean? We're looking at the extinction of code switching. That's language, hair, dress, the whole 9 yards. I just pulled this so quickly. Hair is on the air. These are all reporters, and there were dozens more who are wearing their hair natural and locked. They get pushback from some public. When you're in the public, you're going to get pushback. I remember hearing years ago that Deborah Roberts, who was married to Al Roker, had a friend who was dark skinned and gorgeous little thing like she is, who left the business because of all of the, now that of course was shade, colorism, racism, but we're talking about it all. We're talking about being who we are and bringing our flavor to the newsroom. I thought that that was indicative as well by, let's see, I think Whitney might have a story. I'm gonna share, I hope this is the one with, let me see. Yeah, okay, that was it. Doo-doo. Okay, that ain't, it's not sharing. I know. Why aren't you sharing? Well, stop. Well, I'm hearing it. Okay, that was a clip of, that was a clip. What am I doing? Okay. That was a clip of, oh, that's what I've done wrong. Ta-da. That was a clip of the folks at Fox 2 talking about how much flavor Josh has. But I don't want to keep going too much longer without us getting to our talent. So I was going to take you in alphabetical order. The beauty of it is that all of their work exists right online. Their full resumes, LinkedIn, the whole 9 yards, and lots of clips of them reporting. So Whitney, let's start with you because we're going to go in alphabetical order. Tell us about what is it like, and you're in on the west coast of Michigan, and we know the politics of your community. What kinds of preparation did you do to shield yourself in the armor to know you're coming out as you are a woman, a Black woman with natural hair, and you have all the abilities to be a wonderful reporter? Tell us about that.
Well, I started wearing my natural hair actually in the pandemic. So in my first job in Lynchburg, I always had it in the back of my head, this idea that in order to look the part, to look polished, I would need to wear my hair straight all the time. And because I do not have a relaxer, my hair, if it gets wet or if it's humid outside, it will not stay straight. I opted to wear wigs during my first job. And it got to be a bit cumbersome, but I felt like I was playing the role that I was hired to do. And then I continued that when I first came to Wood TV in Grand Rapids in 2019. But once the pandemic hit and hair salons closed and I kind of had to do everything on my own, I just said, why not give this a go? I mean, outside of work, I do wear my hair natural all the time, or I did in college. So I'm like, what's the big deal? I did not go to my management and ask their opinion or permission for it because they're not Black women. So what authority would they have over how to style Black hair? And I just showed up to work one day and it was fine. No one said anything. No one really cared. And I thought that was great. I wasn't really expecting in the newsroom I work in now. I feel like we're pretty diverse in our thought process. I wasn't expecting to get any backlash or even pulled into an office to, have a talking to, and that turned out to be the case. I did, though, fully expect that when I went to apply for new jobs, I might get the note of, oh, we prefer your hair straight, or even from viewers, I might get some of that pushback. But for the most part, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from viewers about my hair. A lot of people really excited to see a Black person on TV with curly hair, with an afro, and doing it loudly. So that's been very rewarding in and of itself. But in the back of my mind, I always knew there would likely be someone who had something negative to say, and there have been, but it's been seldom few compared to how many people have had positive things to say. So you just
That's
have to kind of have a thick skin
Mm.
and know that you're making this choice for yourself, and someone else's opinion doesn't affect how you feel about yourself. It can affect how you feel about yourself. So
How do you feel about having to even give that thought? How having to even factor that in?
it's a little bit, I want to use the word frustrating, because I can't think of another word, but it is a little bit, because it's kind of backwards to even think that that's something that you have to consider. Like I was saying, when I applied for a new job, a part of, in my opinion, being a Black woman is that we change our hair all the time. From when I was in elementary school, all the little girls around me, we were getting, a new hairstyle every week, whether it was, just the way it was parted differently or the way it was braided differently. It's kind of in the fibers of who we are. So
Yeah.
the idea that once you enter the professional setting, that's no longer allowed is kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
And also the fact that we always repeatedly say, oh, it's just hair, it's not that big of a deal, but it is a big deal for a certain sector of our population. Is something that we always have to consider. So in that aspect, it is kind of frustrating that it's something that you always have to be thinking about. And this outdated idea that our viewers won't recognize you if your hair is parted on the other way, or if you have braids in your hair, especially when a lot of times we are maybe one of two Black people in our entire company. So it's kind of silly and it's outdated. And like I said, it can be a little bit frustrating to even have to consider, someone else's feelings about my personal choices of appearance. So,
So Josh, did you give the beard any thought, or was it just a non-issue? You just started growing?
Okay, so the beard came about when I was on medical leave for about 2 weeks, Alicia. And it was a simple, I didn't go to the barber shop, I didn't shave. I'm at home for 2 weeks. I'm just kicking back, relaxing. And then a few friends of mine, good friends of mine, said, hey, I'm kind of liking this beard. What are you doing? I just haven't gotten around to shaving. So that was that. But then they said, you may want to go back to work that way.
How?
Oh, and I said, okay. So the night before I went back to work, I was about to shave. And then at that point, a few friends had told me, give it a try. It may be a look they need over at Fox too. that was what was relayed to me. So I went on the air the next day and it became a thing. It became the thing out of nowhere. And so here we are. I've gone with it.
So how did it become a thing? Say more about that.
Okay, so I guess I don't look like anyone's child anymore. That's
Oh.
People saying like, I don't look as young as I did before.
Oh.
37, but people tell me I look younger than my actual age.
Right.
Without the facial hair. Therefore, once I grew the beard, people say like, oh, you look more the part, if you will.
Oh.
It's a good look on the air.
Makes sense.
And because maybe all the grays.
Yeah, because listen, I was watching for about 2 minutes trying to figure out who's this new brother at Fox 2 when I just realized this is my regular brother. This is Josh. Excellent. So Michael, is Michael with? I see. Yeah. Okay, Michael.
Yes, I'm
You
here.
were waiting on a reveal.
No, I didn't realize that it wasn't on. I turned it on earlier and it keeps turning
Okay.
off. So that's why I pressed it right now.
Good to see you. Good to meet you. I know you've been working today, so thanks for coming in off the road. So you're from California, and so you're in a whole nother world.
Completely. I'm completely out of my element in every aspect. I mean, I moved to the Midwest for Northwestern, which was fine, but then the pandemic happened and I ended up getting a job at WLNS. They offered me a position. And so I was kind of like, okay, but I had never been to Michigan before. And I had never, I mean, for me, I think Lansing is a very small town, but now that I've been here for a while, I think that other places are small towns, so that's been interesting. But I think for me, the biggest adjustment was in California, people look like me, but here nobody looks like me.
Right.
So I think I was a really big shock for mid-Michigan when I went on air. And thankfully, by the graces of God, they have been extremely, extremely nice and supportive of me. But I don't think that my station had ever had, a gay male with makeup and the soft voice and, like who wears like mascara and things like that. I don't wear eyeliner, but I do wear mascara. But, so just all of those type of things. And I think here in this area, it really caught a lot of people's attention. And I've always been myself since I was younger. And I don't know if it's just because where I grew up, in LA and stuff, but I've always been myself. And so when it came to getting into this industry, so many people would say, oh, you need to change your voice. You need to have it deeper. You need to not wear so much makeup. And I'm like, well, I like to contour my face. It's who I am. This is how I speak. I think that if I sounded deeper or something like that, it's just not who I am. And so when I interviewed at WLNS, I interviewed for a regular MMJ position, and my manager, news director said, where do you see your future? And I said, I really do think that I would thrive in morning news. And so he was like, well, have you done any live shots before? And I said, no, I'm just getting out of Northwestern. I haven't done anything. We've been in the pandemic. And so he says, well, we'll try you out to see, because morning show reporters do a bunch of live shots. So I did one and I went, but before I got here, I was so nervous. I kept thinking, they're going to pull me in and say like, hey, you can't, do this much blush, or you can't do this much with your face, all those things, but not once have they ever told me anything. And I think the reason why I've been so successful with connecting with the community here has been because I've been myself. But which wasn't the case, because I was offered a job in Lafayette, I believe, Indiana. Lafayette, and they offered me a position, but they wanted me to sign a contract saying that I would do coaching lessons and that I would wear whatever they wanted me to wear on air, and all of those things. And I was only allowed to do my makeup the way that I was taught. And so I said no, thankfully. And, I ended up at WLNS, and it's been great. I anchor the mornings, I report in the mornings and stuff. So, but I do think that being yourself definitely pays off. And I have gotten some looks here in Michigan, but I don't think nothing like I thought I would have gotten.
Wow, that is really good. Along with appearance, and you kind of touched on that, Michael, so we'll go in reverse order, continue with Michael and then Josh and then with Whitney. This is alphabetical by last name in case someone thinks I don't know the alphabet. Okay. So you said this is how I speak. So code switching is, of course, that concept that, because, okay, I'm doing it now. This is not how I speak to my friends and family. This is my professional voice. What the words that we use, that kind of thing. How do you have a code that you ever switch to, Michael? Because if you never do it, then you're not tempted. I
don't think that I do. And I think sometimes maybe I'll do, like when I'm anchoring, I'll get a little bit like deeper or something, or, this morning Lansing Police Department went out to speak with people or something like that. But when it comes to like the way that I write, I really do write the exact same way that I speak. And I think that's another reason why the community is connected so well, because when I talk directly to them, and I pretend that they're sitting in front of me. I don't act like if I'm talking to an audience, I love my anchors, but like when they toss to me, I don't say, like, Jorma, Kiera, this is what's going on. I say, good morning, everyone. For those of you at home who've been in this area, blah, blah, blah. So I think when it comes to speaking, I don't think I really code switch at all. I really just am myself.
You brought us a little bit of California to Michigan, and we like it.
Yes.
Yes. Josh, you and I have been in informal settings. We're both members of the Detroit chapter of National Association of Black Journalists. And so he knows this is not how I talk all the time. What about, Fox 2 is a nice on-air environment where they, let you bring your flavor out. But what would you say about code switching?
About code switching, I don't like to phrase it as code switching, simply because to a certain degree, you have to bring a level of professionalism to the job. You're Michael, you're Whitney, I'm Joshua, but there's still a level of sophistication you have to bring to the craft on any given day, every day. But you can still incorporate exactly who you are in your own authentic way. So when someone says, oh, you sound too proper, what does that really mean? So when a person brings that question up, I throw it right back at them. What do you really mean by that? Do you want me to go on television and say, what up, doe?
The Detroit
mean,
anthem, what up, Doe? Right.
What up, though? I mean, if it's fitting for a lighthearted segment, sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you have to be professional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's good. Whitney?
Almost started talking before I unmuted. So
Hey.
I definitely, I definitely think that I do code switch when I'm on air. So even right now, like you were saying, I'm using my professional voice right now. And I think to a certain extent, it is kind of required of us, especially as a source of information. People are here to learn something from you. So while I think the way I speak outside of work, anyone can understand me, it makes it so much easier when you're enunciating all of your words and you might not be using words that people don't know what they mean, or the way that you string your words together. But outside of work is when I can really be my 100% self. So I would say to a certain extent, when I'm at work, I'm being myself, but I'm being the corporate version of myself. That's what I always say. So and to a certain extent, it can be a little bit exhausting. Even, as on-air talent, you're having a bad day, you're at Meyer, and someone, is approaching you in some way, you cannot do respond how you might want to respond, because number one, you're representing a TV station. Number two, it is just would not look or sound
It'll be on
good.
Twitter.
So,
yeah.
Exactly. It'll backfire on you. So you do have to always be a little bit, I would say, a corporate version of yourself that you may not be at home. But yeah.
So what about in terms of when we bring our authentic selves to the newsroom, that's also content, suggesting stories, bringing, stories from our communities, whether it's our age range, whether it's our, our interest, our special involvements. How is that going for you in your newsroom? So let's do that same reverse order, Michael, Josh, and then Whitney. Are you able to bring, the reality is the LGBT community, we just don't get enough stories anywhere.
Yeah, I will say in my newsroom, I 100% am able to pick any story every single day. So I plan out my entire week. So I've never been told like, you can't do this story. I mean, I've done stories on, a day in the life of someone who has HIV, what PrEP is, when it comes to Pride Month, those type of things. So here in our newsroom, and again, I think everybody, I will say, at WLNS, everybody has a different experience, I've learned. But my experience is I've been blessed and fortunate enough that my superiors really let me do any type of story that I want. But I will say, I think that there have been times where I've seen other people, who have brought stories to the table where they wanted to really cover something and they weren't able to. But for me, I do get the ability to cover those LGBT topics and stuff. But I will say, and I guess maybe Josh can kind of touch on this, but there have been times when I first got here, I think a lot of my following here can be a little bit more conservative, but they really do like me. Great comment, they like all those things. So I think sometimes I will also stir away from certain topics to an extent because I don't want to rock the boat too much. And I think now that I've been here a little bit longer, I feel more comfortable doing anything, like I act a little bit more myself on air. Not that I never did, I guess, but they've always seen the highlight on my face. So I think it's just, I didn't want to rock the boat at first, but I've never stirred away from the topic, but I've never just like driven right directly into but it is still something, that we bring up, or I'll say, like, oh, someone in Williamston, there's a gay couple that, their house has been getting, their signs taken down or things like that. And our newsroom does really, they will go and cover that even for like the day side. So that's been a positive for me.
And of course, you're a multifaceted human being, well beyond your LGBT identity. So are there other things that are of interest to you?
I mean, I am also, Hispanic, I'm Mexican. So
hello.
Yes, I know. So that is definitely a big thing here. I will say though, I don't speak Spanish. So in California, I know in California, they like to call me like a whitewashed Mexican and all these different jokes. Yes. So here, there's only a handful of, I think, Hispanics, Latinx people in the mid-Michigan area, but majority of them like do speak Spanish. And so I'll get messages from them, you know, sometimes like, hey, can you cover this? Or like, hey, there's this Mexican restaurant, you should go do this. So, and I do go and I cover all those things, you know, I do like Dia de los Muertos and all those kind of things to kind of teach this area, you know, this is what Day of the Dead is. This is what it means in Spanish, or, you know, just things like that. So I do get to bring a little bit of that to the table. And there are other times too, you know, where there's other, you know, cultures, whether it be, you know, the Black culture, or, you know, like maybe the Asian culture, something like that, where anything that's different, I really do like, I'll say, you know, hey, can you do a morning live shot? Can we learn how to make this together? Can we make tamales for Christmas on air? And I think this area, so many people, I guess I didn't realize, because growing up in LA, so many people really don't know anything else besides what they grew up in. And majority of that is just, you know, middle America, that is white. Right. And they have never been outside of that box. So I think when it comes to content, bringing things like that, not just from, you know, the Latinx community, but, you know, the LGBT community, all those communities, it is nice I'm able to do that. And I hope when I leave, the person that takes this over can continue to do that, because it's definitely made a huge impact in this community. And I've gotten so many messages from people who've sadly said, like, I didn't really care for gay people before you, but I really enjoy you. So it's very, it's like, thanks. I don't know how to take it. Yeah. So I think the content is really important, not only being yourself, but followed by that content. I think it's important to make a difference with the platform that we have.
Absolutely. Josh?
Right on, brother. For me, someone who I'm Black and Lebanese, I grew up on the east side of Detroit, and my upbringing is somewhat complex.
Yes.
As I've shared publicly. With that being said, when I first came back home to Detroit, I kind of held back on certain stories when I probably should have gone there all the way. And it took a good friend of mine in the industry when she said to me, I think you going there will work out more than you realize. And so that led to me doing stories like talking about Black Bottom Paradise Valley, the way I conducted the interview with Kwame Kilpatrick, where in a very civil way, when it's talking about the community, when it's talking about race issues, it's okay to shake the room in a very civil way, but you're still shaking the room. You're bringing the kitchen table conversation to television news.
Yeah.
And that is more needed, because when we talk about this platform, bringing your authentic self to the newsroom, people need to know who you are exactly.
Right.
To a degree, at least. They need to, again, they need to know. They need to feel like they know Whitney, they know Michael, they know Josh, they know Alicia, they know Krista, they know Heaven, they know Stacia, they know Carol. That's what television news is today. It's about relating to the people in your own way, on your own terms. And if they love you, they love you. If they don't, they don't. You're not going to make everyone happy. So the person who said to Michael, I didn't like gay people until now, you be polite, of course, but in the back of your head, what the hell do you mean by that?
Absolutely. And you know, what I love about Josh's life story is, I mentioned in my class, when people say mixed or biracial, hello, that doesn't just mean Black and white. This man, we have, as you know, Detroit, we have the largest community from the Middle East of concentration, because I know the largest population is in California, but so he represents the two largest groups in our community. And I just think it's just so enlightening, and he brings it very comfortably to the air. And I will always love that about Josh. I'm the little old lady who won't quit telling him that.
For me, to hit on that, Alicia, for me, it's a topic that you just touched on. When you're biracial, there are a lot of people in this world. When I did the article with the Arab American News talking about my upbringing, there are a lot of people who came to me saying, I feel I have to choose one over the other, And that's not the case. You are who you are, and you can represent all of who you are equally and comfortably.
Right. Right. I love seeing pictures of you with your Lebanese family and your Lebanese cousins, and they have a doggone restaurant, and it's like, we should be there with Josh. Okay, let's not start talking about food. Whitney, what would you say?
I echo the same things as Josh and Michael. Content is so important. And I always say too, you know, we always talk about the need for more Black and brown people in newsrooms, but it's kind of it doesn't have any worth if those Black and brown people are not bringing their unique lens to the newsroom. And obviously every Black person, every Hispanic person, every Asian person, every Middle Eastern person has a different lot in life, different experiences, but those experiences color the way that you would tell stories. And it's so important to have those people in your newsroom, but also have those people be vocal. And I know for a lot of us, at least speaking for myself, sometimes it can be hard to speak up in a predominantly white space because maybe you have before, and those concerns or comments were kind of blown off or not taken seriously, or maybe you just feel like there's no strength in numbers. You're the only person that holds this opinion, but it's so important for you to speak up, especially when it comes to content on things that you don't think are right, things that you think we need to be doing better, we need to be doing more of, because otherwise, what is the point of representation? You know, there have been stories that my newsrooms have done or that they've considered doing that I didn't agree with. And I knew that people who looked like me also would not agree with it. And you have to explain to your newsroom why this is wrong, why this is not appropriate, why this lacks context. And it's so important to have yourself at the table, your full self at the table, because if you're not confident in who you are, it's a lot harder to speak up on that kind of stuff. Which is why when we're talking about content, like my favorite stories to do are of people from marginalized communities, whether that be Black people, whether that be, you know, someone who's queer or what have you. Those are my favorite kinds of stories to do because those voices really don't get as much attention. There's a reason why there's this rift between certain communities and media and how they feel about media. And it's because maybe the way that they've been portrayed via media was not from someone who had a similar lens on life as they did. So their stories were not told the way that they would want them to be told. So I love talking about, you know, stories that reflect people who look like me and things like that. And so important.
Absolutely. So I want to be sure, see if anyone in our Zoom audience has any questions. Don't want to keep barreling forward until I check in on that. Well, actually, the raised hand function is under reactions. Raised hand function is a good way. So, but until then, so this webinar, the beauty of it, it's being recorded. So certainly it's going to have life well beyond the folks who are in attendance right now. So when students reference this, they're going to be doing internships and they're going to be entry level who come into the business, and they're not going to have that confidence. What are one or two tips that you might give them to help them feel confident in bringing content as well as their authentic self to the newsroom? And so we'll go Whitney, Josh, Michael.
I think a lot of it comes with age, honestly. I think when you first start it, there are some people who are confident right out of college or what have you, but the reality is you aren't as experienced as the people who you might be working alongside. So imposter syndrome will kick in. You'll start to feel like, oh, do I really belong here? Does my voice really matter? So I think a lot of that comes with age, maturity. You'll be more confident in who you are outside of work. So you'll naturally be more confident with who you are at work. But I think what made me feel confident at work was really just focusing on building my craft, really earning my keep. And so when I do walk into a room, I don't feel like I still have to prove to you why I deserve to be here. My, you know, work speaks for itself. So I think that's a really important thing as far as being confident in your newsroom, and also being confident in yourself because you know what you bring to the table. And we always have this conversation about, you know, if someone of color is hired over someone who's white, there's this idea that automatically that person is not as qualified and they only got hired because of what they look like, or, you know, and that's something that I really wish that we thought differently about, because if you think about it, if two people have the exact same resume and one person comes from a certain background, they might be bringing something extra from that
Mhm.
background that might not already be in that newsroom from the person who has the exact same resume.
Mhm.
So you have to yourself value what you bring to the table, your opinions, your plight, you
Mhm.
know, your experiences as something that's an additional asset to any room that you walk into, because it is. So I think once you start changing your mind about how you think about that, and what's kind of been indoctrinated in us, then you'll naturally gain confidence in what you bring to the table.
Mhm. Excellent. Josh?
We all have walked different shoes. We all have walked in different shoes in our
Mhm.
lives, professionally, personally, etc. And I think newsrooms can become stronger if we all appreciate that fact
Mhm.
and learn from each other when it comes to that.
Mhm.
When I worked in Florida, when I worked in Wisconsin, in Florida, when I worked in Fort Myers, Florida, I was the only Black male out of all 4 TV stations on the air.
Mhm.
When I worked in Milwaukee, right before I came back home, I was the only Black male anchor out of all 4 TV stations. So in
Mhm.
those kinds of situations, there was a bit of anxiety, a bit of, can I really be me to a full
Yeah.
degree?
Yeah.
That eventually changed, as I alluded to earlier, when I came back home, when I had a good friend of mine say, you need to go all the way there in certain situations when appropriate.
Right.
And what also led to me taking the approach I do now with my journalism is this is the home, this is where I grew up, this is my home. So if I'm gonna come back as a Black man saying, hey, I'm from Detroit,
Yeah.
I'm one of the people,
Yes.
then I need to show up
Yeah.
and I need to speak up
Yeah.
when the time is appropriate. Alluding to what you said, when you're at the table, your voice needs to be heard.
Yeah.
And that's just what it comes down to. Whitney, you're in your hometown, I'm in my hometown. Michael, you're beginning your great career.
Yeah.
We all bring different perspectives, and so we can't be afraid to speak up.
Right.
And there will be certain situations where, in my current newsroom, it has gotten back to me. People say, "Oh, Josh is cocky. Josh is full of himself." No,
He ought to be.
that's not the case. And I've also raised the point: if I had blonde hair and blue eyes, would that be the same case?
Mhm.
Be on the same things or taking the same stance? If I looked a certain way, would you still say I'm arrogant or I'm full of myself?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so those are things we have to be mindful of as well, as women, as minorities, and so on.
Yeah. And also to your point, as attractive people, because if you were a more ordinary looking people, and there are to the benefit of, there are ordinary looking people on the air now, and I don't think they would get you're full of yourself. So that, youth, attractiveness, all of these things, body size, all of these things.
What I say to that, and that has been thrown at me too, like, oh, Josh, some people think, because this is not me saying it. It has been said to me. Let me be clear about that. It has been said to me that, oh, you have an advantage because you're attractive.
Mhm.
And my response is, so because I look like the beautiful Black woman who brought me in this world, that should be counted against me?
Yes. Because you know what? If it gets you, you still have to stay inside.
Yeah.
That's the thing about affirmative action, which is not part of this conversation. But I went to law school at Wayne State. I might have got in on affirmative action, not sure. But I got the same coursework and the same test, and I took the same bar exam. So, a lot of these issues are.
It's all about getting a fair opportunity.
Yeah, for sure.
It's all about getting a fair opportunity, and then after that, you have to deliver.
Have to deliver, absolutely. Michael?
Yeah, I completely agree with, both of them. And it's so funny because when I first started here, I think people see me and they think like glitz and glam and like I talk like a Kardashian and whatnot. And it's like majority of the time they're like, oh, like he can't do the work, like he can't MMJ, or like he can't tell a story. And I'm like, honey, just because I look like this doesn't mean like, and I think a lot of people too, when I first got here, they were like, oh, he's from LA, he went to Northwestern, like he's gonna think this, or he's gonna be this like mean person, which is completely the opposite of what I am. But I think, just like Whitney said, you really have to kind of prove yourself in a sense. And when I first got here, before I went to mornings, I was doing dayside. And one of my first stories was when Whitmer was, the alleged kidnapping. And so they gave me that and they were like, okay, do something for the 6 o'clock. And after a week of doing stories like that, I feel like I guess like Whitney said, like you kind of like proved yourself in a sense. But I will say I was trying to think really hard because Whitney was talking about, and Josh mentioned it too, you know, like you get imposter syndrome. But I'll be honest, I think when I got here, I was so stressed out every day when I was working, like thinking like, am I going to make deadline? Am I going to mess something up? It's actual. I don't remember if I had like imposter syndrome or paying attention to anybody. I just remember thinking like, I need to get this story in by 5 and 6 o'clock. But I do think like Josh had said, you know, a lot of people do think like, oh, you know, Michael, like, well, you do so well because you have such a great personality, or because people think you have a great personality and things like that. And thankfully, nobody has ever, I've never had any issues with anybody. I think there have been times like Josh has said, and I don't know if Whitney mentioned it, but there will be times where you can feel that people, you know, I guess I'll say this. For instance, I had a viewer come up to me last week and she says she's getting off the car and she's like, Michael, you know, like lots of compliments. And I'm like, oh, thank you so much. And then she's like, I just wanted to tell you, do not let, and she's like, I'm not going to say any names. She's like, but you know, do not let the people who you work with bring down your smile or your sparkle. She's like, because I can see when people do not like how much energy you have. She's like, and I want to let you know that I know that your work is just as good as how good as you look. And she's like, so don't let that affect you. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. But right over my head, because I never pay attention to what other people are doing towards me in a sense. So it's like that I really stopped and thought about in a sense of, you know, I guess like Josh said, you know, people may think one thing or they say these type of things and they're not always true, but yeah, that's pretty much the exact same thing as all of them. I, you know, piggyback off.
Yeah, that was a blessing and a curse though. The person now has you focused on a reaction you weren't realizing they were picking up on.
Yeah, right. I mean, some days, I don't know, because other days I'm always like going and I'm like, what am I going to do now? My contract's up soon. I have so many millions of things going on. But yeah, in a sense, it was a blessing and a curse because I did stop and think about it and I overanalyzed other situations where I was like, right. I'm like, you're right. There was a little something fishy with this or with that. But I do think, you know, like Josh said, sometimes when people think you're good looking, not when you think you're good looking, because I think all of us have some type of like body dysmorphia or they hate something about themselves or they don't love it. But I do think that there's a lot of times when people see that and they assume like, oh, you've got the perfect life, you have the perfect look, you've got the perfect this, and you got this job because of that. But it's like, you don't know everybody's struggles. You don't know what happens when they go home at night. You don't know if they stayed up all night laying in bed, crying, sleepless. You just know the good morning, Mid-Michigan. Thank you for waking up with us today, blah, 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 or good morning, Detroit or Grand Rapids. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, I think those two are in their hometown. Somebody wrote in the chat a question. Are there markets you have avoided? I think Michael gave us a good example of a market to be avoided. Because I don't even know, do they do that as much anymore? The shaping of the on-air persona, but
I just know it was, I think it was like 18 or something. It was channel. I mean, I have no problem saying who it was. It was a channel. It had 18 and it was in Lafayette. And I still have the email. And it's crazy because so I'm from California. And I don't know if any of you guys know the Southern California area or if you've ever been to Palm Springs, but Palm Springs is a very gay area. And I had applied to Palm Springs, the location there, and they also, the news director, I still have that email. He wrote me back and he said, your voice is too high and you're not attractive to look at on air. So you need to fix your voice and your look before we would put you on air. And I was like, wow, that's like the craziest thing because everybody there is so gay. So I thought I would be fine there, you know, but clearly I wasn't. So, I mean, God put me here where I'm by myself. Nobody else looks like this. But, you know, so there was a point where I was like, I should avoid these certain markets. But then once I started getting those kind of emails, I was like, well, I thought Palm Springs would be like this. Maybe I should just try pretty much anywhere. But even as I look into my, you know, future career, my contract ends the next couple of months, there are still times where I think like, or I'm very mindful in my sense of like, okay, I can be a lot to look at for people who have never seen somebody like me. So what I've told my agent, you know, like, let's be very careful with what the opening shot is. I unfortunately I can't have it be
Mhm.
too much or too little because I don't know what these markets want, or I don't know, this sounds very sad to say, but I don't know if there's a very white conservative man who's at the top, who's sitting there looking to say, we
Yep.
already have a gay or we already have a Mexican. I don't need that right now. So those are all things that I really do think about, not specifically so much of which market at this point, because I think I've learned that you just can't really tell, but it was an original thought.
Yeah. Wow. Understood. Shantae Lewis is a student at Wayne State, and she's a member of the Journalism Institute for Media Diversity, which I direct at Wayne State. This is a blatant advertisement for students who are interested in majoring in journalism at Wayne State. Shantae has a question. Yay.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shantae Lewis. So I do actually, it's kind of interesting because I'm listening and I'm wondering, is there any time when being your true authentic self might cross the line in a newsroom? Because I enjoy getting my nails done constantly, but when I go see my grandma, she's like, you need to cut them. You'll never get a job in the newsroom if you have long nails. And it's just like, that's a question I have.
Can I answer that one? So number one, I'd like to show you my nails because people who notice around the newsroom, I am a nail girl. I've recently in the last 2 years gotten more into it, but my nails are always funky, like always. This is zebra print with lime green, by the way. So I think you have to be confident in whatever you're doing. So of course you will get no's some places because not everybody thinks the same. And as long as what you're doing is still functional to your job, I think you will be fine. But you have to do so with confidence. And you do have to do it with a certain level of professionalism. I don't think something like style, as far as, maybe you like to wear a lot of floral or you like to wear bright green nails. As long as you're still doing your job properly, I think you will be okay. I think where you will run into more issues actually with being yourself is people might consider, for instance, I was talking earlier about how it's so important for you to voice your opinions about content and what your newsroom chooses to put on TV. I think you will get more pushback being so opinionated in your newsroom. And that's not to say that you shouldn't be, because I honestly think that you should be. But I think that's more so where being your 100% self may cause you more friction at work, is maybe then you're painted as the difficult employee, or you're a little too opinionated, or oh, Whitney always has a problem with X, Y, and Z, or she's sensitive. But that's so important. That is such an important role in our job. And I think that is where you'll get more pushback than things like, your nails or the color shoe that you decided to wear. And that's not to say that you won't get pushback, because you definitely will on some way, especially if whatever you're doing is outside of what's been considered normal and professional for so many years. But I think it's fine for you to do that. It shows who you are underneath, your personality outside of work. And I think it's kind of fun. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Are you guys ever impressed or surprised by anything? Oh, wait, Heaven has a question. Heaven, yes.
Hi, my name is Heaven, and I'm a grad student at the University of Georgia. And I am wondering if there has ever been a time where you had a story that you wanted to bring to the newsroom or bring to your producer that you felt was important to your community, and that it kind of got turned down because other people didn't feel like it was important or needed at that time. And if so, like, do you wait to try to bring it up again, or how do you go about that?
I would like to tap in on that one. It's when I did a special on Black Bottom and Paradise Valley a few years ago, and there are two Black communities that were basically torn down over a period of decades. And it took me about 2 years to put this special together. When I first came back home, I started learning about Black Bottom and Paradise Valley. And the essence of the topic is something that's not even taught in Detroit public schools. Now it is, but before it wasn't. So you're talking about history in your own backyard that many folks in the metropolitan area are not even familiar with. Mm-hmm. So once I got everything I needed as far as interviews, footage, information, et cetera, to put this half-hour piece together, I didn't feel like I had the full support by many people in my newsroom. Yeah, my news director, assistant news director, they backed me up on it. But as far as the EP, the producers, etc., they wanted me to go cover some feature for the morning show. But it's like, no, this is something you really need to take a look at. And once it came together, you had people walking around the building outside of the newsroom saying, I haven't seen something like this on our air in quite a long time. So you're going to have plenty of stories like that. But if you know you got the goods, you push forward.
Yeah, that you know, it's an opportunity to have a position on the air, whether it's producer, putting content on the air, or the on-air talent as well, and to use that opportunity in the way that you guys are describing. Old folks like me, you're the hope and the dream that so many times I had executive producer at, actually this was 100 years ago when I was at 2. I was looking for diversity amongst the guests we were going to have on a show who had HIV. And this was many, many years ago when the stigma was, you know, uber compared to now. And he told me, I know you see yourself as the watchdog for Black people. It couldn't be that, you know, I'm bringing journalistic content, text to this story that you're about to do completely wrong with on-air guests, on-set guests, and their stories are just not, you don't have a good mix of people. You had the beautiful young white man got it from a blood transfusion, and then several other white guests, and then the one Black guest got it through sex. In those days, and I was told, oh no, you're the only one who'll look at it that way. So when I hear your stories and what you're able to do in your newsrooms, it's like, good, this is what we fought for all those years. Are there things that you're seeing on the air that I've just reflected on how refreshing and inspired I am by some of the things you're able to do? Are there things you're seeing, whether it's national or in other markets, or some of your friends doing that you think is equally laudable, things that you're happily surprised they were able to do?
I think so. Like, I know, and I don't know if Whitney, if you know who Dana White is, but you know, like her story for her hair got picked up, you know, by Good Morning America and our newsroom here. And I think, Josh, I think if I heard correctly, was it WLNS that you were trying to wear a beard on that they didn't let you or something?
No, this was a student of mine at WLNS. Yes, about 10 years ago.
Okay, because I've heard that there was a guy when I first got here, he reached out to me and he was gay. He's in Chicago now, and he was like, I tried getting a job there and they told me I was too gay. So I didn't realize like that WLNS had this history in the past of it. But you know, I think there are certain times where you see people's stories. Like I had mentioned, Dana White is a reporter who she wore her hair natural on air. And I don't know the history at our station before that, but I just know that there was nobody who wore their natural hair of curly and being big. And so that really set the bar, I think, in this. I don't know if I would say like the whole state, but I think it set the bar in a sense of like, maybe even over at Wood. I don't know if anybody there wore their hair like that before Dana did it a couple of years ago, but I think it definitely set the bar for people that knew our station and worked with our news director, because they were like, oh, Jam's letting, you know, his people do that. And I think lastly would be in this market, our viewers know, and we joke around in our newsroom, we'll say that we're like the United Nations because we have a person of every walk of life. You know, we've had Indian, we've had Mexican, all of those things. And I think we would hope that it would inspire other stations in our market, but it has not. If you look at theirs, it's very different. So I think there is some inspiration there that is good from other places.
That's a good example too, of how when one thing happens in a market, it can either yes or no carry to the other. Josh?
And to allude to Michael's point, yes, when I first started WLNS, they were not a fan of me wearing facial hair. So I went with the baby face, if you will. And even at Fox 2, I thought about growing facial hair for a moment. I would have a 5 o'clock shadow, and then management asked me, can you shave it? This time around, I was off long enough, the beard grew fully enough, I pop up on the air, and then before they can even have an opinion about it, in my opinion, I think before they can even really express their opinion, the viewers loved it.
Yeah.
Therefore, what are you really going to say to me at this point? If the people are loving it, then I think we're squared away. So that's
And
how
there's a
the whole-
mechanism to find out that the people love it because they're social media. You know, that's the beauty of
it
social
blew
media.
up. Like, no, who knew a beard would become a thing? And that's what happened. So
Right.
I was gonna say,
Right.
I do think like too, like Josh said, there's many times where something, like if viewers react to it in a good way, management isn't going to say no, or like isn't going to tell you anything. And for me, again, I don't know, obviously my management, you know, has been super open and everything, but I will say, I don't know if I haven't been as successful as I've been with the community and like gaining a following here and stuff, if it would be the same story. Like if I had gotten backlash of like, oh, we don't like this, you know, this gay guy on the air or whatever, would they have been like, hey, let's tone it down? Or would they have been like, hey, let's leave it yourself? But given that it's been a positive for the station, they're like, yeah, keep being yourself. But I don't know if it would have been different. And I don't know how it would be at Fox 2, but I mean, like if people had wrote negative comments about your beard, like would they have let you, or, you know, that is something that I think about.
Yeah. Reaction. So speaking of Grand Rapids, when a sensitive story that affects your race, gender, or culture group, Whitney, how's it going there in the newsroom with the news out of Grand Rapids? The news story out of Grand Rapids.
The police shooting, I'm assuming you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's been a lot. It's not the first officer involved shooting, obviously, that I've run into. But I think coming off of the heels of 2020, which was such a contentious year, it's been difficult. There have been a lot of tough conversations that we've had as far as how to cover it. Not everything that I agree with, but again, goes back to why it's so important to be yourself in your newsroom. But yeah, I think that 2020 really gave us an opportunity to look at the way that we cover stories like this. And I think we've made more of a conscious effort, and I won't even say just would. I think industry wide, a lot of stations have looked at the way that we've covered Black and Brown issues over the years and how it was received by those communities, and really taking a look at how we can do that better. I think in the last 2 years, my station has really stepped up in our efforts to make sure more communities' voices are heard and to cover their stories in a more robust way. For instance, last year, myself and one of my colleagues, who is the only Black male anchor that we have, we kind of took the reins of the Black History Month special. And while the Black History Month specials of the past were good, I don't think that they really highlighted Black voices as much as they should have and could have. Obviously, you know, if you're doing a story specifically about a historical event and the only person who knows that is a white person, yeah, you can have that person as the voice in your story. But I think maybe we didn't have a really vast understanding of what Black history is, especially the way that it's taught in schools. It kind of starts and ends with slavery, but we're so much more than that. So it was really nice for us to be able to really have complete control of that special. And we got so much content that we actually ended up doing 2 separate specials last year. And then this year, we did the same thing. We didn't have 2 specials, but the content was just so much more meaty. And I think it touches a lot more people. So
you know, it talks about what you were able to accomplish, and that must have felt really good. Some of the complications around the reporting of this police shooting, has your station and how much in the market are they focusing on the victims or the deceased, the non-police person, his criminal background and criminal history? Has that been a part of the conversation?
Yeah, that actually has been a part of the conversation. How much of that do you share? How much is necessary? And one of the big conversations we've had is that you need context for something like that. Of course, it's a very sensitive topic for for Black and Brown communities who have for years felt like these stories were not covered properly or were thrown under the rug. And while a lot of middle America is just now finding out about this happening, Black and Brown people have been teaching their kids for decades how to interact with police in case something like this happens. So it's definitely been a conversation again of how we cover that, how much we go into, and if you are going to cover it, why are you covering it? You need a real reason. It can't just be kind of filling in the blanks for someone who's looking for a reason why this person deserved to die. So that's been a very important conversation that we've had to have over the last few weeks. And as this thing is still going on, I'm sure there will be other conversations that we will have to talk about. It's just really having a balance of making sure that the police station or the police department is not under attack, but also the victim is not put on trial for dying. So yeah, it can be difficult.
Right. And also when the officer is named, what about his background will come out? Because, you know, it should be even distribution of, I'm sure he's got the history as well. We don't know what it is, but so what I want to do, what I've learned to do is as I wrap up is to give everybody an opportunity to kind of give a parting comments. So I'll go in the reverse alphabetical order, which will be Michael, Josh, and then ending with Whitney. Any parting thoughts?
I think this was great to talk to everybody, hear everybody's experiences. I think everything we really touched on is important. And I do think, pretty much to sum it up, you should always be yourself. I've learned that. And I guess for me, the biggest thing that I've learned being here in Michigan so far is that everywhere in the world is completely different than Southern California and LA, and not everything is, it's just completely different. And there is a reason why so many people are advocating and fighting for equal rights, and they still feel the way that they do. And I think when you be yourself and you, of course, always act professional and you don't, you know, draw any negative attention or things like that, but you're still yourself, I think that it opens up so many doors for not only you, but people that are behind you, people who are on the side of you, people who are in front of you that couldn't open up that door. And so anybody who's applying into this, you know, just make sure, like, yes, you want to hit all those key points of like the necessities that you need to be a reporter and to be on air, but you also want to like be yourself and remember that like America back in the 1960s when it started TV is not the same America that it is today. And if somebody can't fully understand that, then that station and that market is not for you. And there is a place, whether you believe in God or a higher universe, they will make sure that you get to where you need to get to and that you don't have to change who you are just to wake up and tell people, hey, there's a shooting happening here, there's a fire happening here, and there's a daycare that's going out of business over here. So that would pretty much just be my sum up. But thank you guys for having me and letting me talk.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Josh?
Okay, I'm going to slightly pivot to bring it to my point. Over the weekend, I watched the documentary on Kanye West on Netflix. A remarkable documentary. And we're going to set aside his personal issues. We pray that brother can get the right treatment and stay consistent with this. We're going to put that to the side. I want to focus on his craft. And in that documentary, when he was under Rockefeller Records, under Jay-Z, under Dame Dash, it showed how there was an effort to pigeonhole him, to just keep him as a producer when he's trying to tell these folks, I'm an artist as well, I can do it all. But it was just that attempt to just keep him in a corner doing what they wanted him to do. But he kept on pushing forward. And as we all know, as far as the rap industry, Kanye West changed the game.
Right.
I mean, he will go down as one of the greatest rappers of all time, but by the way, he changed the concept of the industry.
Yeah.
So the point I want to make is do not let being different discourage you in any way, because being different can make people feel uncomfortable. It can make people feel threatened by you. And that probably means you're doing something right, because it's something they haven't seen before or they're not familiar with. So don't be discouraged by being different. That's the point I would like to close.
That's a great example. Great. And Whitney?
I was actually going to bring up a celebrity point too. Whenever I think of someone who has done something as their 100% self, I always think about Cardi B. So a lot of people, when she first started rapping or she first started coming out, they kind of thought of her as like, not take her seriously. Oh, she's ghetto, you know, she's less than, she's uneducated. But then you look at the height that she's risen to, and she did it all being herself. And it's so rewarding once you can make your goals, you can get to the place that you want to be, and you did it by being yourself. You didn't have to jump into a box that somebody wanted you to be in. You didn't have to, you know, sacrifice your morals or your character or who you really are to do it. It's just so rewarding, and you will run into obstacles or people will push back on that, but keep pushing through it because it's so important to be your unique self, and it really is your power. Who you are, where you come from, what you do, and how you do it. No one else can do it how you do it. So being yourself is really your power, and I would recommend anyone always push yourself to be more you than you were yesterday.
These are great thoughts. I've learned so much. You know, I like learning from people who are younger than me, because this is the only way that we can stay current and keep the world moving forward as it is. So I want to thank the three of you so much. This has been a great Sunday afternoon, and I want to turn it back over to Krista Ferguson for our goodbye.
Yeah, thank you everybody so much. I learned so much today. Coming from a little white community, being a white girl, I don't know much of this stuff. So this is great. So thank you for coming. And then Heaven, I did send you a message. We did do some gift card giveaways. And so if you want to just reach out to Stacia, I sent you an email about that. But other than that, thank you so much for taking time out today. And I hope you all get to enjoy some sunshine and stay tuned for the Student Production Awards. So take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
You too.